welcome ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. I've just finished filming and uploading the post-fight review video for KSI versus Tommy Fury. Was it the right decision? Was it not? We get into that. We also talk about Logan Paul and Dylan Dennis. What on earth was Dylan trying to do? If that's your scene, we get into it. Check that out. For the boxing traditionalists out there though, prior to that, I also uploaded a video discussing the new unified middleweight champion of the world. Janibek Alim Kanuli dispatched of Vincenzo Gualtieri in fantastic fashion. And ladies and gents, there is a new monster on the mountaintop of the middleweight division, which could help get traffic moving in a division that is desperate for life to be breathed into it. And we talk about how and why that might be the case, so check that video out. For this particular video, I want to talk a little bit about Tszyu and Brian Mendoza. Before I do, let me just also say that later on in the week, I'm hoping to bring a technical breakdown for Joshua Buatsi and Dan Aziz. That's a firework fight. It's got it written all over it, so tune in for that. But back to this particular fight, another one that had fireworks in it. Tszyu overcoming Brian Mendoza. A unanimous decision, 116, 112, 116, 111, and 117, 111. So anywhere between 9-3 and 8-4 according to the judges. I thought it was anything between 7-5 and 8-4, to be honest with you, to Tszyu. I thought that they were a little bit harsh on Brian Mendoza early in the fight. The commentary team as well, who had it 3-3 after 6 rounds. I thought he started off really well. I had him winning 4 rounds to 2. I could even see a potential argument for 5-1 in the first 6 rounds to Mendoza because he was so much more active than Tszyu, and he was so clever with the work that he was doing. You know, Tszyu is a rising star, a shooting star, coming straight from down under all over the globe. The Americans are talking about him. He's making waves, and rightly so, because this is a guy who was in a position to fight Jermell Charlo. Jermell picked up a knock, went on this long hiatus, then he decided he was going to step up to go and fight Canelo Alvarez. In the meantime, what did Tszyu do? Did he sit there resting on his laurels saying, listen, I'm in line for an undisputed title shot, I'm not going to take any risks? No. He fought Terrell Gausha, got dropped in round 1, ended up winning the fight, but he understood I need to work on certain things. So he went on to fight a former world champion in Tony Harrison. He went on to fight Carlos Ocampo, and now Brian Mendoza, the guy that just cleaned out Sebastian Fundora with a massive shot in his last fight. He's been seeking to take risks in order to consistently improve. That Joe Joyce route. Now, Joe Joyce, he fell short on his route, right? He fell short to Zhilei Zhang. It all became unstuck. And look at, unfortunately, the way he's being treated in terms of public opinion. So there was a lot on the line for Tszyu to be doing these things. But he feels as though he truly believes in himself and can continue to become a better fighter. And you're seeing it fight by fight. But there are still defensive lapses there. And what you saw is Brian Mendoza spot a lot of them and capitalize on them. You see, one of the things about Tszyu is that he's quite low volume. But in addition to being quite low volume, he'll walk you down with that high guard and he seeks to try and parry with that right hand. But it's not a subtle parry. He's not just sort of flicking the wrist to deflect shots. He literally moves his hand forward and down and tries to push you away. And that creates openings. Now, in addition to that, when you're going to attack him, he'll often switch to this, I want to call it like a half Philly shell. His arm sort of drops low and he sort of covers up and then leans. He tries to sort of lean away from the shoulder, but he doesn't lean in a bladed enough stance, sideways on. He's almost a bit too square on when he does it. And so what can happen is you can get a fighter that will double up on his shots, but by varying the height of the shots, you can draw his hand to one place and then capitalize on the gap that's left. So what Brian Mendoza was doing is constantly moving laterally, getting him to reset with his feet, and then targeting the body, for instance, or the chest, and then coming upstairs. So he'd shoot a jab to the chest and would bring the right hand down of Tszyu, and immediately he'd come over the top with the left hand. And then he's moving to get him to reset. It was really good stuff, very effective stuff. And at points, it just looked as though, you can't say schooling, because he wasn't making him look stupid, but he was outworking him with some really nice, slick stuff. But you could see that there's always this composure with Tszyu. You could hear his girlfriend at ringside or his partner screaming, break him down, break him down. They understand that it's a process. He's methodical rather than dynamic and athletic and very fast. He's physically strong, very powerful and methodical. So he's taking his time. He's looking to pick his shots. And when he does get going, he averages 40% roughly in accuracy rate for his power punches. Now, for a guy who's reliant on his power punches, because to be low volume, you're understanding you could get outworked. So to be low volume, what you're saying is, right, my defense isn't amazing. It's not a Floyd Mayweather low volume whereby you're going to let go of a lot of shots. I'm going to be deflecting most of them. Then I'll land my own sniper type pot shot and I've won the exchange even though you threw 4 punches and I threw 1. You're going to be getting through against Tszyu. So when my punch lands, it has to count. So to have a 40% accuracy when you're loading up on big shots, that's effective. That's dangerous, right? So he's very accurate considering how much weight he puts on those shots, and it's like a natural weight. He's not overloading. Where he is very good as well with his physical strength is that he uses it intelligently when it comes to framing. When Mendoza was trying to buy himself time to parry, to tie him up, you would see that he would literally just put an arm out and push him away just to create separation. Maybe Tommy Fury could study a little bit of Tszyu, because he obviously had no idea how to stop the consistent clinching, right? So he understands how to generate separation, Tszyu. And then when he does start letting go of his power shots, he's very, very varied with it. He can throw uppercuts that at one point he threw 3 consecutive uppercuts and they really hurt Mendoza. They buzzed him. From round 7 onwards, he completely took over. The jab, when he uses it, is powerful, whether it's to the pit of the stomach, solar plexus, to the face, the right hand, whether it's a straight right hand with no loop on it or 2, or even if you're right up close on him and he's literally got no area to load up and he's just hooking around, he's wide, they're almost like slaps. Even those have an effect. He's just very naturally heavy-handed, just like his father, who had great short power. And like his father, he's patient. He's a stalker, and he's very confident in what it is that he does. Now, when it came to Brian Mendoza, one of the areas that he also noticed, I think there was a limitation with Tszyu, is that when you would punch him, he'd often sort of turn. So he's not just behind the Philly shell, he's sort of like turning away from the shot. And so he would spot that. So he, at one point, he was throwing quite this combination quite often. He would throw this right hook around the body, almost as though he's trying to hit the shoulder blade. But he's almost trying to bring himself around. So like he's hitting it as a distraction and then throwing this shovel hook into the pit of the stomach of Tszyu. The point is, you can freeze him up and then work off that. And that's something he's going to have to consider. Because let's say he does come up against somebody like Jermell Charlo. Jermell doesn't move in an intelligent sort of little sidestep, lateral movement to change angles method that Brian Mendoza does. But he's very athletic and he can get on his back foot and move around the ring, and he can capitalize on your errors. Don't look at the fact that he couldn't put a dent in Canelo either. He's a puncher at light middleweight. So if Tszyu is getting touched early on against Jermell Charlo, you might be in a position where you might not get a second chance. He could potentially bust you up before you start to get going. So he has to work on his defense. There's no doubt about it. In addition to that, you also saw that whatever you say about that performance of Jermell's against Canelo, he dropped him once, but he heard the final bell. He didn't bust him up and have him hanging on. Brian Mendoza got a lot more beaten up by Tszyu than Jermell Charlo got by Canelo, for instance. So you can't just say necessarily, I'm going to rely on trying to knock out Jermell Charlo if you're Tszyu, right? There's a lot of ifs and buts there, because he's capable of hurting anybody at light middleweight. But you really going to rely on that against a guy who's going to have more volume than you, more dynamism than you, who is a power puncher. It's risky. So for me, he has to work on his defense. Let's say that next fight doesn't happen. And you're looking at some of the other contenders in there. You've got guys like Sebastian Fundora. That's a really interesting fight, because once again, he might look like a beanpole, but prior to that Mendoza knockout, he looked very durable, did Sebastian Fundora, and he comes right up close and he's a hurricane when it comes to volume and abuse, constant hooks and uppercuts. Again, is Tszyu going to be able to live with that volume if he can't hurt Fundora? You've got a guy like Magomed Kurbanov, a guy who went the distance with Liam Smith. Kurbanov and his fans felt he justifiably won the fight. Liam Smith feels that he should have won the fight. It was a close fight. Regardless of how you scored it, Liam Smith's a very, very good pressure fighter. He really puts it on you with his foot pressure and he snowballs as a fighter. And Kurbanov was able to go the distance. Again, are you going to be relying on having to knock these guys out? Israel Madrimov, a guy that gets touched a little bit too much for my liking. His entry points are far too basic, comes straight through the middle, and that could be a real problem against a puncher like Tszyu. But Madrimov punishes that body, and he too is very, very heavy-handed, and he's incessant. So there's another very interesting fight there. You know, even, and I'm going to raise a few eyebrows here, from a stylistic perspective, if you're talking about an enjoyable fight, even Josh Kelly would be enjoyable, because with his movement, if Tszyu is not as accurate with his 40% power punching rate, he could be potentially getting outworked early on by Josh Kelly. Now, we know Josh has had stamina issues. We saw that happen against David Avanesian, where he started very, very well, seemed to punch himself out. The pressure of Avanesian got to him. But if Josh Kelly has genuinely learned from that, if he's learned how to control himself more and pace himself more, again, are you going to see Tszyu in a position where he's going to say, right, I'm relying on my power here? I'm not saying any of these guys necessarily would beat Tszyu. I would have him the favourite against some of them. Against one or two, I might fancy an upset. The point is, if he's going to live up to the hype that everybody's talking about, and it's very possible that he will, he still needs to work on his defence, in my opinion. But he's a shooting star of a prospect. And the Australian boxing scene at the moment is absolutely flourishing. You've got Tszyu. Jai Opetaia looks like a phenomenal cruiserweight. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Jai Opetaia. You've got George Kambosos, highly decorated, former unified, undisputed lightweight champion, depending on where you stand on that debate, but he's still a top 10 lightweight. You've got Sam Goodman, the super bantamweight, who's 16-0 at the moment. You've got the Maloney brothers. So there's an awful lot of talent available at the moment in the Australian boxing scene. If you're an Aussie, who are you most excited about? I know a few of you have been mentioning Justice Honey as well, the undefeated Australian heavyweight at 7-0. Who are you most excited about moving forward in the next 12 months or 18 months? Who do you think is going to really be that star that rises above the rest in Australia? For me, personally, if I had to put money on it, I think Jai Opetaia is the main man, but Tszyu might get an opportunity a lot earlier than him to really shine. And it is possible that he would take it against Jermell Charlo. I'm going to save a prediction for a technical breakdown video, but there is still work there that needs to be done in my opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care. Chat to you soon. God bless.